Okay. Ooh, too much light. What's up, YouTube? HPJ here, and I apologize for the blare of light. Because I'm trying to make sure I have some light in the room as well as making sure that you guys can see the cards. So hopefully there isn't much of a glare. But this is pretty much my deck profile for my counter fairies. I know a lot of people are probably expecting a new deck profile. So I'm here to deliver. Uh, it it's probably not something anyone would probably like or expect, but it was something that I wanted to do. Similar to the last deck profile that I'll be posting probably before or after this, where it's just a variation of a counter fairy deck I saw from Japan that was on Twitter that they posted. Even though it's not fitting to the TCG's liking, there were a lot of cards I took out, thank God, and a lot of cards that I put in. So I will have, either I probably will post it or won't post it, but I'll make sure you guys do get a chance to see it. And then my variation of that, and then my reconstructed variation of it, which is this deck. So I'm really excited to get through it. So let's get started. For the monsters, it's pretty hefty on monsters, but it's really low on traps. Really low on spells, high on traps. It starts off with Sacred Arc Air Knight Parshaft. To summon this card, you can, after activating a counter trap or negating the effect of a spell trap or monster, except during the damage step, you can banish 2 other fairy monsters from your hand, field, and or graveyard, and special summon this card from your hand or graveyard, which is amazing because you get to summon it from either the hand or the graveyard, and it still can do a ton of stuff. When this monster attacks, it inflicts piercing damage, and if this card inflicts damage to your opponent, you can add 1 counter trap or 1 Parshaft card from your deck to your hand. So it allows you to get your counter traps ready. It allows you to get your Parshaft cards, because there is a ton of cards that do have Parshaft in their name, which you can easily search for. And this card is just amazing. I wish a lot of the other monsters had the ability, where they can easily just put themselves onto the board by such easy access, but then it probably would generate a lot more play or causing them cards to be limited or banned. So do understand it, but this is pretty much the highest monster and the boss monster of this deck. Following behind it, I'm running 3 copies of Minerva, the Scholar of the Sky. Minerva's effect is immediately after a counter trap resolves, she will gain 500 attack, and if Sanctuary of the Sky is on the field, you can add a counter trap with a different name from your graveyard to your hand. So the one that you use, if you have other counter trap in your graveyard, you can add that counter trap to your hand. That way you can cycle through pretty much a revival of your counter traps, especially in this deck, because you want to make sure that your variations of them constantly have usage, constantly can get onto the board, and constantly can help defend your board, because you're going to be using your counter traps a lot. So to have Minerva to cycle through is very, very useful. Since we're talking about usefulness, we need to talk about the triple set of Bountiful Artemis that I'm running. Artemis is pretty much your draw power for every time a counter trap is activated. Immediately after it resolves, draw 1 card. So this is great for drawing against your opponent, drawing against counter traps in chains, and just really dealing with a lot of stuff. Artemis is pretty much the start of the counter fairy deck, and a lot of decks starting in the late eras of GX, when the fairy stuff was coming out, Bountiful was pretty much the go-to monster for a lot of those counter trap decks. Next, I'm running a full set of Guiding Ariande, besides it blowing up and allowing you to get counter trap from your deck. It allows you to not have to pay life points or discard cards. For your counter trap cost, especially when it's in the pendulum zone. So you have a lot of leeway and a lot of advantages that you can generate with Guardian Ariande, especially with its own own setup and archetype. So by archetype, I just mean the counter fairy stuff. So that's Guiding Ariande. Then for the 2s, I'm running 2 Metelli, the Sage of the Sky. Each time a counter trap activates and is immediately after it resolves, you gain 1,000 life points. If you control Sanctuary of the Sky, you can choose one card your opponent controls and destroy it. So it's not too bad. Then we have Lord the Liberator. Every time a counter trap is activated immediately after it resolves, add up to 2 banished fairy monsters add 2 banished fairy monsters to your hand. So it helps you cycle monsters you would want in case you use them for Parshaft. And then 2 Honest, because it wouldn't be a light deck without Honest. I had to cut the 3rd Honest. I was debating if I want to run 3. I possibly can, but the other monster that I added in here actually suffices for its own reason, and that's the Barrier Statue of the Heavens to pretty much generate that light defense that this deck kind of really needs, especially if you're going to go up against a lot of other attributes. The Barrier Statues, depending on their attribute, will force both players to use only those attribute monsters in special summons. So if I can protect this card, which I can, this card can really be a great offense and defensive monster. So that is all for my monsters. For my spells, it's probably the lowest count of spells I could have in this deck. I'm running 3 Sanctum of Parshaft. You can easily search this card with Arc Air Knight Parshaft, but its effects are amazing. One, this card is Sanctuary of the Sky while it's on the field or in the graveyard. So if there's a monster that can retrieve Sanctuary of the Sky from the graveyard, this card is treated as it, so it can get to it. Next, any of your face down spells and trap cards cannot be targeted or destroyed by card effect. Amazing. And its next effect is it gives 300 attack and defense to all fairy type monsters on your side on the field. So it's a power boost to them. And then its last effect, once a turn you can target up total of 3 fairy type monsters and or counter traps with different names and put those monsters on top of your deck in any order. So it's a pot of average for your counter traps and your fairy monsters, which is great because you get to recycle a lot of your resources. You get more draw power from Battleful Artemis. You just have a lot of options and things to do with this card, and it is so amazing. The only thing is that it's not a field spell. But if you're wanting to run Sanctuary of the Sky, go for it, because it's a great card too. Especially with a lot of your counter fairies needing, a lot of your fairy support in general just needing Sanctuary of the Sky. To follow that up, I'm running 3 Ties of the Brethren. I'm not rushing this deck to get into a big competitive scene, so you won't see cards of demise either. But Ties of the Brethren, everyone in here is a fairy. There's a lot of level 4s. Get your barrier statue, get enough stuff to defend it, bam. Which is pretty much what this card helps, especially on the first turn, so that's why you're running multiple copies of it. Otherwise, you can just set it and let your opponent think it's a counter trap and bluff it. So, that's that. And then for my last of my spells, of course, Raigeki, Dark Hole, Monster Reborn. Your power spells. So, for my traps, a lot of counter traps. We're going to start off with Rebirth of Parshaft. When a spell, trap, or monster effect is activated, you can discard, reveal 1 counter trap, then discard 1 card from your hand, play 1,000 life points to negate the activation of that card, and if you do, shuffle it into your opponent's deck. Then you can summon 1 Parshaft monster from your deck or extra deck to the field. Now, despite the fact that it has so many attachments to its effect, if you can get to Parshaft, if you can get to Arc Knight Parshaft, you pretty much can search for your sanctuary, put it on the board, and then you can just pretty much not care too much about everything else. Especially if you can get to Guiding Ariande fast enough. And with Guiding Ariande, you can easily, do a lot of stuff without having to pay the life points, because you're really going to rely on Ariande. That's why I'm running a full set. And Parshaft being able to search for this, Parshaft being able to retrieve it, and then the Sanctuary being able to retrieve it is just amazing. Really amazing card. Lots of 2 loves. It first starts off with Divine Punishment, because we're running Sanctum of Parshaft and it being treated as Sanctuary of the Sky. I'm running 2 Ultimate Providence to deal with monster spells and traps. I'm also running 2 Red Reboot, which is a really good card. If you have this card, try playing it, because it does deal with counter traps. You can play it from your hand, and if you have Guiding Ariande, you don't have to pay your life points to activate it from your hand. So it really saves you the trouble. But these are some of the powerful traps that I want to run. And then the last of the cards in the deck are the Solemn Brigade. One Solemn Strike, one Solemn Judgment, and one Solemn Warning. The Solemn Trio. So that's pretty much it for this deck profile. I don't have an extra deck built, but an extra deck can be built of whatever you choose to build it with. Not if, but when Cybernetic Horizon comes, do get a hold of Hoshin again, if that's what they're gonna call him, Hoshining again, the Light Fairy monster who's known as Great Star, and go ahead and use that card because that's a really amazing card with this deck. It gives the 500 attack to all your 500 attack and defense to all your light monsters. It can retrieve a light monster when it's destroyed by battle or card effect, and it's just an amazing monster. So that's pretty much it for this deck profile. I hope you all enjoy. Like, comment, subscribe, and until next time, you guys. HPJ signing out. Take care.